Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. This is Brock Beard from lastcar.info, starting off with our live stream after the conclusion of our Homestead. Unofficially, your race winner is William Byron, and unofficially, your last place finisher is Timmy Hill. These and many other stories we'll, of course, talk about as we get going with the show tonight. Obviously, the David Starr story, as you can tell from the title of the video, is going to feature quite prominently in our discussion tonight. But before we get to that, let's definitely talk about the action here from the Cup race that just wrapped up. Again, your winner right now, William Byron, Tyler Reddick, very close to pulling off the victory there. An inspired rally at the end of the race there after having some problems at the beginning of it. He was really seemed like he didn't have nearly as strong of a car as he had in the Xfinity race or perhaps in this Cup race last June. However, once the weather changed a bit and it got a bit darker, it seemed like his car was catching up and he was closing all the way to the finish line there. Unofficially, the margin of victory 2.777 seconds. He was gaining a lot of that even on like the last couple corners of the race there. But a great job by Reddick. It seems like he's definitely one of the other drivers that be knocking on the door of getting his first victory. Nearly had 3 first-time winners in a row. If not for maybe some strategy at the end. Reddick seemed very critical of himself at the finish of that, but a fantastic run for he and the Childress Bunch in general. I know that Austin Dillon was up there for a while looking at the results here. The 12th place finish unofficially for Austin Dillon. I have to talk about Michael McDowell, a fantastic run for him. 6th place finish there unofficially there for Front Row Motorsports, continuing a great start for him. The 2021 Daytona 500 champion now with 3 straight top 10 finishes to start the year. A tremendous accomplishment for driver and team. Next week, though, I think is going to be really the interesting test because McDowell has had some of his worst runs at Las Vegas, not simply in his times as a start and park driver before, but even driving for Front Row Motorsports and the Levine team before that. I think he has like 2 or 3 last place finishes there, especially in the spring race. That is going to be a big test there. A lot of times he was running very well in those races, though, even back then. So maybe this will be a year that he can kind of bounce back from that and see how much further this streak goes. But I think next week is going to be a very interesting story to talk about in Las Vegas, and as we continue on for the rest of this season. All righty, but so lots of crazy things going on during this weekend. But definitely, an interesting scenario there. But yeah, I mean, Alex Bowman, great run. I mean, the Hendrick team in general, just having a great showing there. I mean, you got Bowman's team was right up there. Kyle Larson, of course, certainly feted to be one of the drivers that was going to be a big contender in this race. I know there's a lot of like exaggerations about that Kyle Larson seems to be a easy contender to win one of these Homestead races, even though in the Cup Series, he's just kind of been knocking on the door, but not really a championship contender in that sense. Now that we have this race not as championship weekend, which I still think is kind of a mistake, this weekend I think showed a good reason why it still should be the finale, as dramatic as some of these races can turn out. I think as a standalone race, it does open the door for competitors such as William Byron and others to be more of a factor in the finish of these events. So we'll see what happens going forward. But a lot of positives there. I mean, both Byron and Reddick in particular had a lot of struggles in those first 2 races. Things just didn't quite work out for them. So definitely getting their season back on the right foot. Martin Truex Jr. in the same sense there in the 3rd place finish. But there's a lot to look forward to moving further ahead. Mention again Timmy Hill for the 3rd straight week. Really, the Cup Series last place battle was pretty open and shut. It took more than 3 laps, which was unlike what we had the last 2 weeks between Quinn Houff and Derek Cope before that. But Timmy Hill out after just 21 laps with an electrical issue. Seems like the mechanical gremlins that the Carl Long team has had over the last couple of years still are something that they're dealing with. I know fuel pump issues seem to be a big problem with the 66 team last year. Hopefully they aren't as big of an issue this season and they can get some more solid finishes there like Timmy had in the Xfinity race just yesterday, which we'll certainly talk about there. But unfortunately, Timmy Hill out very early, also out early James Davison with some engine failures there along the way. Both him and Corey LaJoie dropping out in the early stages of this one. Davison out after 61 laps, LaJoie out after 151, and Quinn Houff and BJ McLeod running out the bottom 5. McLeod briefly had the last spot for the beginning parts of the race, had a pit stop after just the first lap, it looked like, judging from the scoring, but had a belt come off the power steering pump, which at Homestead, I imagine, would just be a nightmare given how much of the track is corners. It's like the old Atlanta in that sense, although different degrees of making and everything. But definitely a situation that you don't want to be in. But good job by the Live Fast team to get him back out there. 9 laps down to the 34th spot there, showing for him. Yeah, and then other drivers that still are struggling this first part of the year. Matt DiBenedetto, 28th at the finish there after back-to-back crashes to start the year. Hopefully things turn around for him, but it's there's other drivers that are struggling. Alberola, after his great run in qualifying at Daytona, ends up getting that tangle with Ryan Blaney. He finishes 30th, 3 laps down at the finish of this one. So lots to definitely talk about there at the same time. Really got to talk about the great run that Chris Buescher had in this race. I thought Buescher was doing a fantastic job at the beginning of this by winning the first stage. Seemed like he was easily going to be a contender there. But, we always talk about how important track position in these races, and that's true to a large extent. But in this one, it seemed absolutely critical. It seemed once that you were further back in the pack, there was no way on earth you were going to get up there, no matter how fast your car was. Denny Hamlin, obviously, with his speeding penalty, was catastrophic for him, only getting back up to the 11th spot at the finish, which was a good accomplishment in and of itself. But Buescher seemed to have, once he dropped back on that one restart, he was just not the same as he was at the beginning. Whether or not they didn't keep up with the adjustments or anything, that remains to be seen. But his teammate Ryan Newman was up there as well. So I think Roush is really kind of turning the corner too. And maybe front row's improvement as well is a good symptom of that as we go forward. But very pleased with how that team was doing, and hopefully we'll see more of Buescher going forward. Again, it's easy to forget how well he was running in the Xfinity Series for Roush's team, and having reunited with the program there, I got to admit I wasn't really following him much at all last year. It was kind of easy to overlook him. I had to keep reminding myself Stenhouse wasn't in that car anymore to that point. But we'll see what happens there. Stenhouse on the same blush. I was very impressed with how he did at the beginning of this race, running in about the top 10 there. I think he dropped back a little bit. Where we see him in the results here? 13th. So no, he still finished pretty well. So that was a good run for Stenhouse. Not known for really being very good at tracks outside of the super speedways, but ran very clean, ran, as well as any of these other teams out there. Daniel Suarez, I've continued to be very impressed with the Trackhouse team. We talked about last week his 16th place finish. Of course, it was revealed that Suarez was very sick, became ill actually in the closing laps of that race, still got 16th. This one had some nose damage, still got 15th in this one, even beating Brad Keselowski, Chase Briscoe, Christopher Bell, last week's winner, all of them finishing behind him. Great run for the Trackhouse team. I think they're really the dark horses this year, and maybe Suarez was opportunities had. I think that would be a fantastic story to see what's happening. So we'll find out how things go in Vegas for them, and if you can do well in these mile and a halves, even though we have more road courses this year, the mile and a halves are still going to be a big part of the schedule, and we'll see what they can do from there. Ryan Preece in 21st. I'm wearing the Preece shirt today. Unfortunately, I guess that was a little bit of bad luck there going his way after he also, like McDowell, had a great start to the season, finishing 6th and 9th in the first 2 races, and then having a 21st place showing wasn't really a factor in this. Even his teammate, again, Stenhouse, seemed to have a better run than him, but an unfortunate deal there. Hopefully things can turn around for him going forward at that point. But let's see. Let me get, oh goodness, I got 91 people in here. Welcome aboard, everyone. We'll be talking about the Cup and Xfinity races here. We'll jump into Xfinity next, and we'll do some trivia afterwards. So definitely stick around if you want to do some questions on that. Looking further back, Joey Logano, last driver on the lead lap in 25th. Very disappointing run given how well the Penske guys were at the start. But a lot of drivers were running basically where you'd expect them to, and others weren't. But then even bigger portion were running surprisingly well. I think, my goodness. I mean, certainly talking about Buescher, certainly McDowell, Reddick, Byron. I mean, all these other competitors up there, a great showing across the board for a lot of these competitors. Ross Chastain, very aggressive, which seems kind of redundant to say. When have we not see him be aggressive? But especially with the blocks down into turn number 3, had a couple of incidents that could have been disastrous. We saw a lot of competitors hounding the left rear quarter panels of other cars. Chastain, I'm sure, was doing a bit of that as well. But we saw it from other competitors, Kurt Busch, and I guess it wasn't just the Ganassi guys, but other drivers seem to be able to do that without actually causing any kind of an accident. But Chastain seemed like he was particularly driving over his head there, but still finishing in the 17th spot, though. I mean, maybe not exactly what they were hoping for, but a good turnaround after the crash he had in the Daytona Road Course last week. So there was definitely that. Let's definitely talk about the Xfinity Series race here too, because we got to definitely feature that. Let me make sure I don't close the window on this. I'm looking off screen here. I'm doing a little different setup here with the computer off screen here to see if that makes it work a little better. All right. But the victory yesterday, first of all, congratulations to Myatt Snider for getting his first Xfinity Series victory. Tyler Reddick, of course, got runner-up in that race as well, unofficially. Hang on. Whoa, hang on, Adam Alexander. You don't get grabbing for the mic here at this point. But Tyler Reddick getting second place unofficially in that race as well. Came even closer to passing Snyder at the end, about a car length of an advantage there. Looked to be a fantastic evening for our motorsports. Both himself and Brett Moffitt getting in the top 10. Unfortunately, post-race heights were failed there for the number 23 team. So the 23 gets last for back-to-back weeks for completely different reasons after completely different performances. Last week with Natalie Decker and the Josh Realm effort, and this time around with Reddick getting in last place and alternating that with Harrison Burton, who had originally gotten last for the second time in his career after an engine failure that happened under caution. Reddick ends up with the first ever last place finish in any of NASCAR's top 3 series, and his first in the Xfinity Series, in his first Xfinity Series start since he clinched the championship at Homestead in 2019. An unfortunate turn of events there, but he certainly made up for it with a great run in the Cup Series race tonight. The hot and cold of that is definitely a big theme through the weekend. We mentioned Timmy Hill, of course, your last place finisher from today's race, but running another blue Toyota yesterday, finished in the 16th spot, getting that one more spot after the issue with Tyler Reddick's disqualification. But of course, the feature of that story, on top of the fact that you had the victory there for Myatt Snider and the great run for some of these other teams, JJ Yaley comes to mind with his 12th place finish. Ryan Sieg getting another top 10 in the 8th spot. Have to talk about what happened with David Starr there. An unfortunate situation on all fronts, and a racing deal the likes of which we have seen many times in the history of the sport. It's one of the things that makes motorsports actually very unique and compared to other sports. You don't really have a situation in football or basketball or anything like that where somebody's ahead by 3 scores, and then suddenly it's like a streaker comes onto the field, and just like that the score is switched around. You just don't get that kind of thing. And in motorsports, you like to think that an accident can happen anywhere on the track, and it's always going to be somewhere where the leader isn't, and you think the leader just has this protective bubble and everybody's got to get out of their way and nothing's going to happen to them as long as they just hold their line. No, stuff happens, and this was another example of it. And I don't blame I don't blame Noah Gragson for being disappointed. That was a brutal way to lose a race. I think we said this about last year too, when he got beaten on the last corner by Harrison Burton at Texas. That was also a brutal way to lose a race. And he's very outspoken in these situations. And I know that rubs a lot of people the wrong way. And, certainly in this case, I think it was a little more egregious because David Starr was having such a great run and just had a tire come apart. Great job by, again, Wookie Atomo over on the Motorsports Business Management team for showing the pictures there of the tire. Tire was coming apart, and there was no way he could sense that on the straightaways, and then coming into the corner. I'm sure was trying to get out of the way of Gragson, and then, of course, tire comes apart, puts him right in his path, worst possible spot. Did a lot of damage to his car, too, even though he was going to be running about 15th for the restart, dropped back to, what was it, 22nd, I guess, at the finish, or 21st, after things settled down there with the Reddick disqualification. But again, I posted pictures that evening of these times that Kyle Busch has had that happen, Chase Austin at Bristol, or the Tim Schendel incident. I can't remember if it was Charlotte or Texas, but one of the quad ovals there. The Schendel wreck there in particular, if you watch the replay to that, Schendel seems to come completely out of nowhere. You got Kyle Busch setting up a pass on, I think it was Keselowski or Edwards, and then suddenly Schendel is slowing up and he's going up like diagonally, splits the two cars and just gets directly in front of Kyle. Nothing you could do one way or the other. And certainly in each of these cases, the driver's not looking to actually, collect the leader and sabotage him or anything like that. And in Starr's case in particular, this guy started last in that race. And, this is motorsports business management, Carl Long's team, trying to kind of get its feet under it, and was having a fantastic run on a downforce track where they are not expected to really be a factor in the finish. Last year, in fact, Stephen Light was finishing last in this race, driving the Supra that may very well have ended up becoming the car that David Starr was running this weekend. I don't know that for sure, but given the fact that Carl Long has a limited number of cars that he's working with, especially on these tracks, it's very possible it may have been. We didn't really see them run that many laps last year and then just parked in the race. We see this in other events that happened along the way too. But very impressed with how well that Starr was doing. He was running in the 12th spot there at one point. Seemed like he was going to be flirting with an even better run there if he could have held on. He, of course, was about to be lapped by Gragson in this particular incident, but I'm sure, much like Landon Castle a couple years ago at Tyler Reddick, would have been perfectly content to just move out of the way, let them get lapped, and still be able to have that solid finish. It was going to happen one way or the other. But yeah, obviously, these tires go down. And we heard this a lot from the commentators this entire weekend about how brutal this track is on tires. And it seems like people just kind of forgot about that. Just like they also forgot that in the opening of that race, Noah Gragson, for some reason, came over the radio and said he was going to be checkers or wreckers in the third race of the season when he hasn't won a race yet and isn't locked into the playoffs. Why he would feel that way going into this, if you just said that he was going to just go out there and just drive the heck out of this thing, okay, that's fine, but you don't really need to be, completely, running the absolute high line up there and going full throttle at the same time. You had a big enough lead that he could have eased up, kind of like William Byron did tonight in the Cup Series race. I'm sure he was pretty mindful of what was happening there. It's easy to say this in hindsight, and and all that, but I gotta say, and this reminds me of something. This may be surprising to hear from me. It reminded me a lot of Jerry Nadeau's run at Sears Point in 2002. I really felt that once he got the lead in that race, he could have eased it up a bit because he had a big enough lead that he didn't have to really flog that car out there. And then maybe that was a reason that the rear gear failed on that car. It pains me to think that because, I'm sure the excitement was there and the adrenaline's there and the car's working great and things are set up fine. And it's easy to be in that moment. And I know for all of us, assuming that we don't have any drivers in the audience watching tonight, it's impossible to really put yourself in that situation and think, okay, I'm in the position of a driver that's about to win the first race of the season, or in Nadeau's case, first race in, a number of years, and try to just back off a little bit. Maybe easier said than done. But I think he did have a very difficult situation like that maybe, a different driver would have handled differently. Again, William Byron was a good example of it, even with Reddick closing as quickly as he did. I know Gragson was disappointed. I know that he expressed in particular his desire to be able to race toe-to-toe with Reddick, knowing that the two of them were running the high lane as well as they did, and to have a good battle at the end. And I think they would have if they, if things had worked out that way, although he seemed like he had a pretty good lead on Reddick at the time that, wasn't going to get a whole lot closer by the finish. The multiple overtimes definitely were more of a factor in Reddick being involved in that finish than anything else. But again, and I think it's also, the countervailing force in this is, it's unrealistic to expect that Gragson would be aware that David Starr was having a great run there at the same time. To him, it's just another car out there. But I mean, I think maybe the spotter should let him know. It's like, look, this is the last car in the lead lap. He might fight you a little more or something like that. It's an unfortunate situation, and there's a lot that's going on there. And that's where I think, it just chalks it up to just being a racing deal. It wasn't a situation where you could blame one side or the other. Yeah, I mean, Gragson maybe could have slowed up more. Maybe Starr could have run a bit lower on the track. But, at the end of the day, we're talking about a tire coming apart in the late stages of a long green flag run, which could have happened anywhere at any time to any of the drivers out there. Again, there's going to be a lot of different views on that, and certainly I'm heartbroken in particular for Starr, given the fact that, like Wookie again pointed out on Twitter, that's going to be his Las Vegas car next week, and now they got to bang the dents out on that and somehow get that thing race ready that week, and that they were looking to have a really good run. I mean, a 12th place run for Carl Long's team is absolutely fantastic. We've seen Timmy Hill do it a few times, and even then, again, the 16th place run in that same race was yet another example. But for Starr, I mean, a competitor that's been out there for so many years, hasn't had a top 10 in a little while, much less top 15. Seeing him have a good finish out there would have been definitely something to see, especially coming from the last spot. I think it would have been a great story. Unfortunately, again, that's the thing that happens in motorsports. The track and the tires don't care about good stories. Something bad can happen to anybody out there, and it can just end up falling in somebody else's lap. And we could have just as easily had a situation where Myatt Snyder would have to wait another week or so to win in Childress's car. So, a lot of different situations there. But I think again, it was unfortunate, but ultimately a racing deal there. And I think while Gragson I think responded a little bit too quickly to that, although there was a little bit of a gap in time between when he was, when the accident happened, when the interview was, I would have think somebody would have gotten his ear about, what happened in the accident and happened. The guy was on the last car in the lead lap or anything. Yeah, I don't know whether he didn't know or didn't care. I don't know, but obviously that's rubbed people, some people the wrong way. But again, it's a brutal way to lose. I say the same thing again from his Texas run there. He's had a couple just slip away from him here like that, and I don't expect somebody to be happy about that. But at the same time, I think that in his mind, and perhaps this is digging a little too deep, that he probably thought that was a lap car, like some of these other competitors out there, that that this guy was running too slow and that he just checked up in front of him, that it was something like that. That's where the rhetoric seemed to be aimed. Whether or not he was talking about other lap drivers and just kind of lumped David Starr into that, even though Starr was running much better, who knows? But it seemed to play a role in the way all that played out. So tough to say there. Oh, Jack Garland, seeing your comment there. Parker is saying that Cole Custer cut a tire down with 2 to go, running 5th. Yeah, I didn't even notice that about him dropping back about that. So yeah, heartbreaker on that situation there too. But yeah, he had another great run. It seemed like a lot of these newcomers in there, and Custer was running a very quiet race really up to that point. Where did he finish? Actually, I didn't even see in the results. Let's get that pulled up here. Hopefully we don't have disqualifications 2 times in a row, but I do have the article just about done. But if I have to re-edit it there, certainly ready for that too. Looking here. Custer, oh goodness, he dropped, wow. Oh, back to 23rd. Oh my goodness, that's catastrophic. Yeah, top 5 run for him, dropping far back. Great job, Fox, catching that. I guess that's really, well, I guess that leads into our weekly, it's almost a segment at this point, where the broadcast just kind of falls short here a little bit. It would be nice to hear, a few more of these stories. I heard some positive comments about Adam Alexander's broadcasting yesterday in the Xfinity race. I don't know what race they were watching, because I quite honestly, I was tuning out of it for a bit when I was working on the article, and I didn't realize just from listening to it that we were having a close battle with Tyler Reddick and Noah Gragson, and they're passing each other within the last 30 laps of the race. I would have thought nothing was happening. So, whether or not they seem to improve on that towards the end of the race, I mean, it didn't seem that way to me. I'm still not particularly impressed with Adam Alexander's particular approach to the broadcasting, where his tone sounds like he's excited, but the cadence that he speaks and the way that he describes things sounds very passive, just not very engaged. Vince Welch is a lot like that too, but Adam's a little bit worse in that respect. Then you had kind of the opposite of that today during the Cup Series race, where everybody is just like laughing through the whole thing. I'm just hearing all this laughter and everybody like, poking fun of this and doing that. And okay, yeah, I don't want to be the guy in there saying stop having fun, because okay, you should be having fun. It's a race, it's a laid back environment. These guys clearly get along, which is great. They're gonna, if they're getting along, then they're gonna help each other out and everything in terms of team dynamics. But don't just laugh through the whole thing here, people. Come on, there's you're still doing a job here. A little bit of professionalism would be appreciated here. Just balance it out a little bit. I'd like to think that maybe the Xfinity Series broadcast, the Cup Series one, are kind of other ends of a spectrum, and they need to kind of find some kind of middle ground there that they could work with. But how many times do we have to keep describing this? How many times does this come up here that we always say that, and nothing ever changes? So, whether or not it is going to change, yeah, I'm not sure, but that remains to be seen at the same time. Beast of Metal, thank you so much for the super chat here. I saw a clip earlier this weekend of the Cup cars here in 2013. They seem to actually able to race even with the 7-inch spoiler. Perhaps this means the engine is a bigger problem with this package than the aero. That's a good question. Thank you again for the super chat, of course. Not sure how that shakes out. I was expecting a much bigger disparity between the Cup Series and the Xfinity Series coming into this race, given that the Xfinity race was really competitive and had a lot of people come from the back. But I thought really, in general, this was a better Cup race than we saw last year. And you just bringing up the spoiler versus the engine, maybe that's one piece of the puzzle there. It seemed like we had a bit more of a competitive race. Yes, it got strung out a bit, but these weren't insurmountable leads. Reddick was certainly a perfectly good example of that. And other competitors, coming up there being a factor at the end of the race versus the start of the race. Seemed like it was more temperature sensitive too by having this race instead of being during the day, kind of going into nighttime and seeing that outer groove kind of develop a bit more. Yeah, I haven't watched the 2013 race in a while. I guess that would be worth checking out to kind of compare. But it would have been interesting to find out if that was much more of a factor in this case. I think that we'd still have there's still definitely stuff that needs to be worked on. Homestead I think the track itself is more conducive to this package because you have the multiple different grooves, because it's just run once a year, and now that it's not a championship race, the focus is kind of more wide open as to who can win. I think the real challenge is going to be in these next few races, especially Atlanta and Vegas, if they've made any improvements since last year. Both those races weren't particularly very good, especially in the fall race at Vegas. Spring race had a little bit kind of craziness at the finish. But then the Atlanta race, wasn't particularly good. Harvick kind of just crushed everybody under his heel on that one. Now they got two races this year. That's going to be a real interesting test. And I think we're going to see probably a greater disparity between the Xfinity Series and the Cup Series there. Hopefully not. I'd love to be wrong about that. I was very pleased with how this race in general, just the race itself, went tonight as well as yesterday. I think it was a very entertaining weekend of racing with the controversies and stuff set aside. But another thing to kind of look at there. I do think, yeah, if they had these cars be a little bit more out of control, if they got rid of the splitter, if they showed these cars being more of a handful, that would be great. Although these cars look like they were definitely a handful for a number of competitors, not just the Hendrick guys between Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson, but Reddick himself was clearly working overtime in the number 8 there. So a different circumstance there. But yeah, so that's a kind of an interesting way to play it out. I have that would probably be kind of an interesting thing to do, is kind of compare to older races of this track and kind of look at longer green flag runs. I know that was one thing that was kind of factored in terms of lead changes that kind of led to the development trajectory of the cars we have now, like how they would watch like a 100-mile segment of a Charlotte race and see no lead changes in. It's like, well, clearly they need to do something different. What that is, we're going to find out. But interesting start to the year. Would have liked it if we had more starters in this Cup Series race. We had a short field here. When you had a couple teams not show up for it that were in the last couple of rounds there. I didn't have the 96 for Gaunt Brothers, and then you had what was it? It wasn't the Beard Motorsports team. They had the other one, but the other team that wasn't entered in there. But we'll see if things kind of bounce back on that. I'd love to see we get some part-time teams or efforts kind of jump their way in here, especially for these road courses coming up. I think that would be more interesting to see. And what kind of road course ringers we're going to see out there. I think you could even potentially have a team like the Big Machine Records team out there in the Xfinity series with Jade Buford, maybe trying to tab on to some of these Cup Series teams eventually. And that's going to be kind of an interesting one to talk about. Colleague, yeah, thank you. Dave Salzman, Isaac, and Braylon there. Yeah, the colleague team too. Would be great to see the colleague team run more races here in the Cup Series, but obviously they don't want to spread themselves too thin. I think they're doing the same. I think they're doing what Rick Ware Racing should be doing right now, where they're kind of specializing more in one division, the Xfinity Series, and then just kind of traipsing into the Cup Series here and there, where they can kind of be more of a factor. I think Ware's Xfinity Series team is very impressive. We talked about JJ Yaley having a good run. Remember, he had a good run in like a really old Mustang last year in Martinsville. And of course, Cody Ware had his career best run in the Xfinity Series right before that on the Roval. I think that 17 car is going to be one to really watch to maybe break in and get some top 10s here down the stretch. It may seem kind of a stretch in some ways, given that you have a lot of Cup programs that are in there. But they're knocking on the door now, and I think they could be a factor further down the line. I still think another story, too. I've seen the comments here already talking about it. Situation with RSS Racing and the switch to Ford, and if the lack of practice is hurting their transition. Obviously, again, they were a team that kind of was bouncing back and forth a little bit on Saturday, still got a top 10 run out of it. I still think that this is going to be the year that Sieg finally breaks through and gets that first victory. I think that Ford thing might be the missing piece. As to how much better the cars are than the Chevys that he's had, I don't know. But again, he's been running Chevy for so long in the Truck Series and the Xfinity Series. It's not a small change for the team, but definitely one that we've definitely been watching more often from one time to the next for sure. So. Yeah, Big Machine was reported to get looking into getting a charter. See, there you go, perfect example. I wasn't aware of that, so that'd be interesting to find out. Yeah, Matty D with the rough year. Yeah, looking at this, I just kind of checking out your comments on here, kind of browsing through that. Yeah, 13 team ran the Supra there. Yeah, I'm seeing the comments there on the title for the for the video there. I know a little tongue in cheek for those of you who are a little more if you've seen seen a certain internet historian video. But yeah, I think it was the only thing that came to mind. I almost thought of tweeting it the other day with the David Starr situation, but really, yeah. I mean, I think the thing that really should be taken from it is how well Starr was doing in that race, and how unfortunate it is that things just didn't kind of shake out. James Sykes, thank you for the super chat, first of all. Hey, Brock, are you planning on doing another starting lineup video again this year? Very good question. The answer is yes, but it is conditioned on a couple of things. Let me look. I need to remind myself where this is. Where's the page? Okay. So, yes. Okay. So the answer is yes. I am looking at doing other starting grid videos this year. I don't have anyone planned for a specific race. I can say, however, that I did set that as a Patreon stretch goal in my Patreon, patreon.com/lastcaronbrock. We are very close to reaching that goal. So here's the way it is. When we reach our next goal, we're about $10 short of that one right now. We'll do another starting grid for any Cup, Xfinity, or Truck Series race this year. And I'll go ahead and, the format and all that is kind of up in the air, but that will be voted on by the members of the Patreon at all levels. So if you're at the lowest level or the highest level or anything in between, once we reach that mark, I'm going to open the poll, and I don't know if it'll be like a week or so on, unless a lot of votes are for, the race that weekend or something. Hopefully it'll be something a little bit further down the line, so to have a little bit more time to set it up. But if the votes go for the race that weekend, then obviously I'll fast track that. But yes, that's the plan on that. So if we do another starting grid this year, that's kind of contingent on that. We're very close to our next stretch goal. If you want to see more information on that, again, check out patreon.com/lastcaronbrock, and you'll have some more information on that. I don't think I've set another stretch goal beyond that. Well, actually, I guess I have one. I have another one on there, but In terms of the starting grids, I haven't had another one there. So how many more grids I do this year, it's going to be still kind of infrequent. I'm very pleased with how much response the latest one got. This for the Daytona race there. Usually the last few years they don't really get that many hits, so that's why I haven't really kind of committed as much to doing those. But I know there's a segment of this channel here that really enjoys seeing them, and I definitely want to still keep that open. I do the Daytona 500 grid one way or the other because I think that's just a special one to do, and I think the format and qualifying lends itself to really introducing the new teams and driver arrangements, and that's something I'm definitely interested in doing. But yeah, if you're open to other starting grids, later this year, definitely check out the Patreon. And yeah, if you're a member of that, if anybody who's active in there at that time, you'll be able to have a vote as to which grid we do, and we'll find out about that going further on there. Ted Hugo, so your comment on there also about the rise of the field fillers. Next episode is still in the works. Again, things I'll admit I've been kind of taking a bit longer on this one here, both in terms of content and in production time. Our Daytona content put us just a little bit further back there, and kind of getting the website started again. So I'm kind of aiming for some day in March to get it done. I don't have a release date yet, but I'm hopeful to get that up there before too much longer, and keep that series going, because I think this next one on the number 80 team, the Stan Hoover Motorsports, is going to be a really interesting one to talk about. There's a lot of different angles in this one too, that I think will be a good follow-up to the Morgan Shepherd episode. I think the Shepherd episode has probably been our most popular one so far, so hopefully we have a good follow-up to that. Let's see. Yeah, just a few playoff spots remain. I know that there's a lot of different situations with the different drivers and teams out there, and saying like, oh, are any of these drivers going to do anything in the playoffs? It's like, well, look, if these other drivers and teams are out there are concerned about these guys taking somebody else's playoff spot, and I still don't think that that's the case. I mean, come on, if they win, they're in. They're all playing by the same rules. If a team out there is concerned about their ability to win and thinks they should still be in the playoff, well, then they better start winning. That's on them. That's not on these guys here. And I don't care if Michael McDowell, Christopher Bell, and William Byron get eliminated in the first round of this. They still earn their spot. And under this bizarre point system, which nobody seems to like, we'll definitely talk about that next, because we had a poll about that the other day. That's definitely the thing to look at. So let me, where was it? I got to get the actual statistics here. So the other day I did a tweet. I was just kind of casually thinking about it. I think it was on Friday, bringing up the importance of who the race winner is versus who the championship winner is. And the reason that I brought this up is because, really, to me, growing up, none of the drivers I really pulled for ever seemed to contend for the championship. So I was content to just follow who won the race. And nowadays, of course, that line is blurred just a little bit, because now we have a situation where if you win a race, it's kind of secondary to, oh, yeah, now you make the playoffs. And now we got to talk about that. And how's the playoff grid forming up? And, who's got, how many spots are left, and who's going to be in, who's going to be out. It's almost become secondary. And I was wondering if it was secondary to the viewing public. And clearly from the poll here, I'm just now pulling it up. The final results we had 1,100 votes on there, almost 1,200 votes on it. And 88.8% said that the race winner was more important than the championship winner. Which one is the most compelling to watch specifically? That the race winner was more compelling to watch than the battle for the championship. And, well, it then begs the question, why is the point system set up this way? Why do we have a point system where, you could win a race, or you could be terrible in a race, and you could struggle somewhere in the season, and have that not really matter, because at the end of the day, the championship is going to be decided between all the race winners that come before. And, what are you racing for from week 3 to, week 26? I think that the current point system would be more well suited if the championship was central, if the championship was the big thing. But in a sport where the Daytona 500 is likened to a championship win, where a driver's life is so profoundly changed by that win, it's clear that we don't have a sport that has the championship be quite that central. So and again, I'm certainly not the first to say this, but I think this is another bit of evidence kind of pointing it out. that the playoff system just isn't conducive to NASCAR racing. I don't think it's conducive to racing at all. I think that who wins in a race and also who struggles in a race is more significant to a championship battle, at the end of the year. But it's an amalgam of all the race winners. It's an amalgam of all the high points and the low points of every team, and how does that average out in the championship? And how can you track how well a driver has done over the course of an entire season? If who wins a race is so central, then you have to have a full season championship, I would think, because anything else, it's almost like a whole secondary race. It's a whole separate thing that doesn't have any bearing on the actual who's actually the best driver and who's actually the best team and so forth. Even the NASCAR championship, when I do that, notice I do a full season championship on that. I know there's one version on Reddit where they kind of do a regrouping and all that, but that's not really the approach I've had on that, because I think that just, again, same reason. I think it kind of loses track of which driver is, had the most last place finishes or perhaps needs to get more attention because they've been struggling more. I think it's a better way to figure it out that way. So, yeah, I think that we're just very much in a situation where, we need to have that re-examined. And I think NASCAR should really treat that a little more seriously than they have. But again, NASCAR is always, we've talked about this, is they've always been in a position to come up with a temporary solution and then just add more to it rather than go back on say, well, that solution wasn't really the best idea. If you look at how completely different the trajectory of the sport has changed with restrictor plate racing, for example, and now super speedway racing. I mean, tapered spacer is constructively the same thing. It's difference between a wheat thin and a thicker wheat thin. I mean, come on, big deal. But it's one of those kind of situations that, the sport just needs to really look at. So, yeah, I mean, it's, you have a situation there where, it's just not being looked at very seriously. And I think NASCAR is kind of dismissive of this a little bit because, they're really emphasizing this. I mean, this whole best season ever thing. And, but at the same time, kind of ignoring these next couple races coming up and saying, hey, it's 28 days till the Bristol Dirt Race. It's like, forget what's happening between now and then. It's not like there's going to be, no racing between now and then. It's like they can't even get to the point where they focus on these individual races in and of themselves, even with these different winners and stuff in it. So it's unfortunate because it's a chain reaction throughout the sport there. And then the race's quality or the race's importance is kind of diminished. But again, I would insist that it makes not only, again, how well a team does, but also how much they struggle. If a driver wins and then maybe, finishes last 4 times in a row, then nobody's going to particularly care because they know that they're still going to make the playoffs no matter what. They're going to be ahead of a guy that finished, 20th every week and then got third, the next week or something. So, does that mean that, the team that won is better than the team that, had the middling pack finishes and then did well there? Tough to say, but in a point system that would be more fair. That would be kind of the way to really look at it. So that's kind of the situation. David C. Yeah, seeing your comment there. It's never been easier while simultaneously never being harder to actually be a champion. Very true. Very true. You can blame a lot of this on Jimmy Johnson, I guess, if you want, now that he's retired, because clearly NASCAR, I think a lot of these particular changes were created because I guess Jimmy Johnson made it look so easy. This is nothing against Jimmy Johnson. He was just that good. Him and Chad Knaus and Hendrick just figured something out there, and they seem to be able to make the adjustments even as well as they did in 2013 and 2016 with the later forms of the championship. I think that a lot of it was more in a response to that. But it's again, I think it's kind of served its purpose, and really, I mean, again, if you want to talk about, I think, just looking at these teams on an individual level, I kind of want to be able to track their progress through the whole season, and not being able to do that because the point system kind of distracts from it is unfortunate. Like I still think one of the most interesting things is going to be, again, looking at BJ McLeod's team versus Team Trackhouse versus 2311 Racing, especially those two at the end there. Trackhouse and 2311 seem to be almost the same level, but Trackhouse has very much impressed me. Again, I mean, I know I mentioned this already, but even in respect to a startup team like 2311 that has the Toyota backing versus the Childress backing over at Trackhouse, very surprised to see them do so much better here. I mean, not a large difference, but a noticeable difference. I think that's going to be one to really talk about. So yeah. Hey there, Yo Yo. I see you there. Right on. I got some goodness. Wow, we're up to 109 people in the chat. Man, that's I didn't expect to get this many people here watching after Homestead, but man, we got a good a good group up here tonight. Glad you could be a part of it here. So let's see. Oh, yes, I got to also mention, I saw this mentioned in the comments too. Thank you for your positive comments on part 3 of the IRL kart IndyCar split. NASCAR man did a fantastic job on that. I'm very pleased to be a part of that program there and doing the recordings for the scripts there in between the Rise of the Field Fillers episodes. I think this one in particular was very profound. If you talk about just a divide within the sport and you know what very different directions you had in the rhetoric between the different sides there, you know, just how intense it was getting between drivers that were in Michigan for the US 500 and the ones that were in the IRL there for the Indy 500, and which one was going to be a bigger disaster, kind of both sides kind of rooting for the other one to fail. It's, you know, it's kind of looked back, I think, a little bit more with kind of a quaint perspective. It's like, well, they split and then they went back together again years later, and now IndyCar is what it is. It's a little bit more complicated than that. Much like we talked about in 3 Before February, there's definitely a different, you know, a different perspective on that I think is a little bit messier than what the reality is too. I also want to mention, I don't remember if I mentioned this on the last show, but I got to say, I'm very impressed with Rick Houston's job on Firestorm. I listened to the whole thing, I think more than a week ago now. And although I think both he and I come to very different conclusions about what NASCAR's response was to the events in the 2000 season, those are some incredible interviews and some great journalism that Mr. Houston's done in his series. And it definitely recommends you check it out. The Firestorm, the 2 years that changed NASCAR forever in 2000 and 2001. Great listen there for sure. And it's broken up. He breaks it up into more parts than he did with my project. So you have like ones on not just Adam Petty and Kenny Irwin and Tony Roper, but also on Blaze Alexander, who I just barely touched on in my video. He gave a lot of great details about who Blaze was and what happened around the events of in October of 2001 to kind of put a finishing mark on that. And also the moments in between all of these events, I think, are interesting. Especially, I think a big reason that we came to very different conclusions in the way that we talked about the subject there is, again, how much more he heard about the culture in the garage area in 2000 and 2001 with drivers like Ward Burton and Ricky Craven, and whether or not, you know, they were going to be able to keep their rides and like how they would just kind of handle driver injuries or how secretive things were there. You know, that's kind of, I mean, again, his exposure to is very different from mine, and it definitely comes across in the project there. So I think somewhere between, you know, what I produced and what he produced is probably closer to what the situation is. It's very hard to kind of take it all together in one thing. But again, I think he did a fantastic job on that. He was expressing some concerns in putting it out there. And he actually talked to me a little bit about it earlier when he was putting it together. I'm like, look, dude, yeah, go. You should. This is a story that needs to be told. And I'm very pleased with the response that people have had in general to just talking about it, because I think it's an important story that NASCAR just doesn't talk about that needs to be, you know, really remembered properly. And the more stories that come out there, just like the JD project, the more stories that come out there, the better understanding we're going to have there. And I think we're on the same side there when it comes to that. So we had a great discussion with Rick about that online there, and I think we both learned a lot on that. I certainly think so. I think it's a great project, and again, Firestorm is the one you got to look up on that. Definitely check that one out there as well as NASCAR Man's video, the IndyCar split on NASCAR Man history. Great content on there. All right. Yeah, seeing a lot of the video subjects there too. Yeah, I mean, again, yeah, ones on NASCAR safety. I saw suggestions on videos, individual videos on you know, drivers like Ricky Rudd. I got some comments on that too. You know, again, things are up in the air. I've kind of set aside doing standalone videos for now, just to focus on the field fillers. Obviously, with this episode, it's taken longer already, and I don't want to put too much more in the way of it. excuse me, a lot more that I've been working on has been just the website, kind of putting a ribbon on the Derek Cope book, kind of getting that going to where it needs to be. It's really a relief to be able to have announced that now. Obviously, kind of working out how to work in what happened at Daytona last month there with that, or well, earlier this month rather. And then the field fillers too. It's gonna be a busy year. And on top of this, we're still looking at trackside coverage too. We're already starting to kind of prepare for what we're going to do at Sears Point in June, and potentially another race between then and Phoenix for the finale. Things are going to be very up in the air. I don't know exactly how media access is going to look versus not only, of course, if the garages are even going to be available for media access. It really looks like it's not, at least in the short term. And then also, of course, how many people they're letting in. All those empty seats are seats that are not available. So it's going to be tricky. If we have to do it from the stands, we'll try to figure something out in that sense. So the coverage at trackside might be a little different, but we're going to certainly make the best out of it one way or the other. And we'll, of course, have more information for you guys on that as we get closer to that. So let me go ahead and jump into some trivia here. The Ward Burton podcast, I was mentioning that that's part of the Firestorm podcast on Rick Houston's one. If you look up Firestorm in any search provider there, it'll come up with the video there. It's I think it's like 16 parts on that. I haven't listened to Ward Burton's interview on what was it? He was on the Dale Jr. download just recently, right? Because they had him and Jerry Glanville. I still need to catch up on both of those. Just trying to, luckily I got plenty of commutes there to fill that in. So that'll be something to kind of look at too. But we'll get that. It's also Scene Vault. Okay. You talking about the Scene Vault. Was it the Scene Vault that had Ward? I guess it was. I thought he was on Junior's show. I got to catch up on, either way, I got to catch up on it. So any more Ward Burton content out there, I'm certainly all down for. I guess Junior had Glanville. But I know that one for sure. Okay, yeah, Ward Burton on the Scene Vault. Okay, so Ward Burton on the, so a couple things with Rick Houston. So I guess that's how the interviews came in with the with that project too. So at any rate, without further ado, we'll go ahead and jump into our trivia segment here. Again, using the old Trivial Pursuit thing from the late 90s. Some of these questions a bit older. We had a really good section last week on wildcard questions that I think were kind of stumpers. So we'll see what we get this time around. I know it's not lost on me that Fox is making a big deal out of a new game show on their channel that they air after the races, and then we come in here and what are we doing? We're doing more trivia. But hey, you have many choices when it comes to live streams and of course game shows. And for those of you in here, I'm glad you joined me for this one. So without further ado, the categories: drivers, the wild card, NASCAR, pits, and teams and tracks. So, okay, those categories again: NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. So go ahead and mention which category you'd like, and we'll go ahead and touch more on this. Do some questions here to kind of wrap it up here. And we'll find out if we won't stay on, I don't think, long enough for the post-race inspection results. But, if it comes along there, we'll certainly find out. If you guys have any other questions about the action this weekend, don't hesitate to ask for sure. Yeah, Ward was on the Scene Vault. Yeah, okay, that was a good one. I got to check that out. I'm seeing the comment. Have I heard any on the updates for the 3 Xfinity Series teams that have missed all those races this year? The 77, the Bassett team, the Second Hour Motorsports car, and Jordan Anderson. Nothing new on that. It does seem clear that the Hour Motorsports team is collaborating with other teams to get their second car out there, although not under their own owner points. They did with BJ McLeod at the Daytona Road Course, and then, of course, this time with the RSS Racing Riam Brothers effort, which has made it a little difficult to describe in one article to the next. But we'll find out. I guess the 23 car is going to be the chameleon this year. I don't know what form that team's going to take, certainly going forward. Pits, tracks, drivers. Okay, I'm seeing a good amount for drivers here, actually. Maybe we'll do that. All righty. Cat skid steer loader. There you go. Alrighty. Maybe that'll be the first question. You never know. Alrighty. How many dozen NASCAR Winston Cup poles had Bill Elliott grabbed through 1997? Don't look it up. I'll read the question again here. How many dozen NASCAR Winston Cup poles had Bill Elliott earned through 1997? All right, we're looking for a number on this one. How many dozen NASCAR Winston Cup poles had Bill Elliott grabbed? I keep thinking it says graded. That's not very clear on that. Through 1997. All right, we got guesses for 3 and 5 and 2. All righty. How many dozen NASCAR Winston Cup poles had Bill Elliott grabbed through 1997? And the answer is 4. 4 dozen poles. And oh gosh, now I got to do math. That's 48, right? There's 48 poles. So did anybody get? Okay, you got a couple who got 4. Junior 249, Ryan Large. Oh, Beanboy 89. You were even quicker on that one. Whoop. Oh, and Dusty DeBoer, you were ahead of him. There you go. Excellent. 4 dozen poles through 1997. All righty. Let's see. Ooh, okay. Now here's a tricky one. This is one where the answer would be yet another question where it would be very different today versus another one. Alrighty. Okay, here we go. What driver with at least 100 career starts has the best average finish? Now, I assume it means the Cup Series, and I assume it means through 1997. So we'll go ahead and bolt that on there. What driver with at least 100 career starts has the best average finish? So at least 100 starts through 1997. Which Cup Series driver had the best average finish? What driver with at least 100 career starts has the best average finish? Yeah, that's wide open. It doesn't say active driver, so it could be anybody before. But what driver with at least 100 career starts is the best average finish? Got Herb Thomas, Tim Flock, Gordon, Davey Allison, Jarrett, Darrell Waltrip, Mark Martin. All right, Byron just wrote a tech 10 minutes ago. Okay. What driver with at least 100 career starts has the best average finish is the question. Kind of like the setup with the computer over here. I usually have it in my lap, but I'm setting it over on a table here. Still trying to make sure I maintain enough eye contact with the camera at the same time so you're not just seeing the side of my head for the entire show. Okay. What driver with at least 100 career starts has the best average finish? All righty. And the answer is Lee Petty. Lee Petty. How about that? Did anybody get that? I see. Oh, yeah, Breezy B. Looks like you got it. Mean Boy 89. I mean, some of you said Petty, but it's unclear if you mean Petty or Richard or Lee or Kyle. I see one for Richard. Yeah, Lee Petty. Is Boyer becoming cringe or is it just me? Well, it's hard to tell. Boyer, I think it's just being Boyer. I think that I think they're giving him a lot of segments that maybe he doesn't have to be as central in. And I think just hearing how much laughter there is in the broadcast, I'm glad they're having a great time, but it's just, I don't think it lends itself very well to a TV broadcast to just hear these guys just cackling the whole time through the broadcast. So I don't know. Because then you get stuff like Cole Custer's flat tire that just gets missed completely. I think the best case scenario is you have 3 guys that are looking at different places that'll catch stuff that the others might miss, and and report it quick enough that you're going to get something interesting in each of the broadcasts. I felt ESPN did that very well back in the Bob Jenkins days. course, Bob Jenkins, we're all pulling for you, of course. All righty. Okay, here we go. Another question. This question is very similar to the last one. What Cup driver with at least 10 season starts had the best average finish? What Cup driver with at least 10 season starts had the best average finish? Now, I'm unclear as that means 10 full seasons or 10 seasons with at least one start. That's up to you. I don't know. Unclear on that. I assume it means 10 in a row. What Cup driver with at least 10 season starts had the best average finish? There we go. All right. Best average finish. Not best points finish. What Cup driver with at least 10 season starts had the best average finish is the question. All right. Herb Thomas, Mark Martin. I see a McDuffie on there, right on. Gordon, Herb Thomas, Jeff Bodine, Curtis Turner, Richard Petty, David Pearson, Terry Labonte. All righty. And the answer is Richard Petty. Richard Petty. Brendan Gaughan. Nope, not quite. Few of you got that one, looks like. Richard Petty. It's like Nathaniel Ivey. I think you were the first one to put Richard Petty on that one. Tyler Steinberg. I see Petty. I see a couple with Lee Petty. Ooh, there you go. Nathaniel, you're used to the gathering of memes that we've had in the show here already between the ooh kind of thing. Oh gosh, I've already isolated the new viewers tonight. All right, next question. What driver won at least one race every season from 1983 through 1997? What driver won at least one race every season from 1983 through 1997? Yeah, it said Richard Petty on that last one. I can see it. Those of you who picked Lee Petty, I don't think you were far off. He seems like he would be in the conversation. No code red this week. I got to replenish on that. What driver won at least one race every season from 1983 through 1997? And the answer is, of course, and a lot of you got it, Ricky Rudd, the Rooster. Ricky Rudd, absolutely. AJM, you got your sticker today. Excellent. That reminds me, there's one of you out there that I know still hasn't sent me your mailing address on there. If you have any, you know who you are if you're out there. If you're watching tonight, definitely make sure you drop me a message there. I still owe you your JD sticker from our Daytona show. So definitely let me know on that. As to the availability of the stickers, as far as I know, I haven't checked Bruno's store lately. That would probably be something to check out if they're posted on there yet. I know that he was working on that last I talked to him, but that's obviously to his time frame on that. Because I was very pleased with how he did the stickers. Oh goodness, today is Bruno's birthday. Happy birthday, Bruno! Right on. I just got the balloons show up on my screen here. Where's the store link? Where is it? I don't see it. I don't see it. It's on one of these somewhere. Okay, here we go. Yeah, hopefully I'll drop the link here if we got the thing in the meantime. Not seeing it yet, I don't think. Nope, thought that was it. Not quite. Not quite. No, I don't think it's in the store yet. But I'll share the link here so you can see. Let me check the Winston Cup Series category. He's got those. No, not quite yet. But obviously, keep this link on hand. I'll drop it in the chat here so you can see that there too. But yeah, Renault's did a great job with those JD stickers. I need to order some more myself, but I mean there's one. I'm sorry, I forgot the username, but I know if you're watching here, what I'm talking about because there's um, I sent out all the other ones except for that one, but hopefully we'll get that one up there too. All right. Next question here. Who is the first driver featured on a box of Wheaties? Who was the first driver featured on a box of Wheaties? Is our next question. Missed the Tide Ride? Yeah, you and me both, man. Jerry Nadeau may have been my guy, but Ricky Rudd was another one that I pulled for. I love the orange 10 cars, or the bright red or orange 10 cars. I like Derek Cope's car. I liked Ricky Rudd's car. Those were, those really stood out. All right, you got guesses for Earnhardt, and Terry Labonte, and Petty, and Waltrip, and the E and Labonte. Who was the first driver featured on a box of Wheaties? I like that, featured on one, like not a not also starring feature or role on it. Who was the first driver featured on a box of Wheaties? The answer is indeed Dale Earnhardt. There you go. Dale Earnhardt, indeed the correct answer. Okay, let's see. Okay, here we go. Here's a command to start engines question. One here. What radio duo started a race by saying, "Gentlemen and Jimmy Spencer, start your engines"? What radio duo started a race by saying, "Gentlemen and Jimmy Spencer, start your engines"? Let's see. Might get some very interesting guesses on this one. What radio duo? So we're going a little bit outside the box here. What radio duo started a race by saying, "Gentlemen and Jimmy Spencer, start your engines"? Don't look it up. Go ahead and just try to guess. We got John Boy and Billy. We got Bob and Tom. We got the Car Talk guys. Click and Clack. Yeah, tough one. I'm stumped on this. I didn't listen to a lot of morning radio growing up. What radio duo started a race? "Gentlemen and Jimmy Spencer, start your engines"? Two guys named Chris on Rock 92. Ren and Stimpy. Yeah, appropriate. Yeah, it's a great command. What radio duo started a race? "Gentlemen and Jimmy Spencer, start your engines"? The answer is indeed John Boy and Billy. Wow, a lot of you got that one. I thought that was going to be more of a stumper. John Boy and Billy. Does anyone remember which race that was? I mean, I assume, are we talking about, well, this is before 2003, so we're not talking the Kurt Busch thing. But I guess we're talking a bit further back. Yeah, it'd be interesting to pull that clip. If anybody knows which race, I really don't know. I assume when I first saw the question, I was thinking of a time after this was made. But conceivably, maybe it's like 94 or something when he had the fender bender with with Ken Schrader at North Wilkesboro. Probably Bristol. North Wilkesboro 96. Okay, well, right on. Wow, right at the line. Alrighty. Let's see. What two brothers started side by side in the first row at the 1998 Daytona 500? Oh, it does go in the 98. What two brothers started side by side in the first row at the 1998 Daytona 500? What year would you say Ricky Rudd was closest to winning championship? 2001 with 91, a close second. I think 2001, Rudd was just about to catch Jeff Gordon in the old the Texaco Star there. He had a great season going, and then he blew an engine at Martinsville, and that was just it. And he just couldn't catch Gordon. Richmond, right before September 11th, Rudd won that race. Gordon crashed out at the beginning, and Marlin crashed out in that one. I think Marlin. Well, maybe Marlin crashed 2002. That's when he got hurt the first time before he got hurt at Kansas. But in 2001, Gordon got wrecked out of that one, and that closed the gap big time for Rudd. He had a huge points night, and then September 11th happened, and the season got put on hold. And Rudd didn't seem to pick up quite where he needed to. I think he had a spin. He had a spin at Bristol, and he had a rough one at Dover. He should have won that, and then Martinsville, the engine failure, that was a big one. That was a coup de grace. Once that happened, Gordon just cruised and won that championship. Everybody makes it sound like Jeff Gordon just cruised to that championship the whole year. No, he did not. Ricky Rudd was working him that season. They were trading the lead at Michigan that year. I thought for sure Rudd was going to win the championship that year. 91. I described it a bit in the JD book. There was a good battle there, but it seemed like there wasn't, other than Richmond in the spring, where they had a pretty good battle for the lead, there was never really good on-track battle between Earnhardt and Rudd. It just seemed like Earnhardt kind of just pointed his way to the championship without being quite as dominant as he was in 93, of course, with Andy Petrie or further on. A much more conservative run that season got Earnhardt that championship. Rudd just had enough bad luck to make it work for him. And I think Rudd only won the Darlington that year too, so he wasn't quite as good. In 2001, he won Pocono, which ended his losing streak since he was in the Tide Ride, and then he won Richmond, and that was exciting. But yeah, that was about the high point of his season, and unfortunately it didn't work out. So yeah, 2001 I think was definitely the closest, for sure. Yeah. No, I really enjoyed Rudd in the Robert Yates car. I thought it was gonna be. I couldn't stand Dale Jarrett back then. I thought, because Dale Jarrett always seemed to get the best equipment. Like that always happens in these teammate situations. One driver gets better equipment, one driver gets better crew chiefs and all that stuff. And Jarrett had, like, I remember specifically at Watkins Glen in, I think it was 2000, Dale Jarrett had a former Davey Allison chassis. And I'm like, Ricky Rudd's driving the Texaco car. He should have the Davey Allison chassis. And, come on. I mean, Rudd lost a race to Davey on a technicality at Sears Point. I thought it would have been incredible if Rudd got to drive a Davey Allison chassis, but didn't quite work out there. So I don't know. I think Jarrett got his championship and Rudd didn't. So there you are. It is indeed the Labonte brothers. You guys all got that one right. The Labonte brothers were, of course, on the front row in 98. Terry and Bobby Labonte. Yeah, Dale Jarrett. I respect Dale Jarrett a lot more now because I know how dominant he was. Like I mentioned in my 90s video, he was just incredible. You go to Darlington, you go to Indy, you go to Daytona. My goodness, he was absolute kryptonite for like guys like Dale Earnhardt and stuff. And he was, yeah. And again, I know that I get a lot of criticism on saying that he was taller and meaner than Earnhardt. Earnhardt was a prankster in a lot of ways. Dale Jarrett was a no nonsense kind of guy. Not meaner probably isn't the best word, but certainly more serious. Like he was not quite as when he was behind the wheel. He's very different now, but when he was behind the wheel, he was not like his father, like Gentleman Ned. He was not the most he was no nonsense. He's kind of like Kevin Harvick is now. You kind of think of it that way. You wouldn't say Harvick's mean, but just no nonsense. Like he's not going to be messing around. That's what made him so tough, I think. Let's see. Let's see here. Here we go. How many NASCAR Winston Cup races had Dave Marcus won through 1997? How many NASCAR Winston Cup races had Dave Marcus won through 1997? How many? Don't look it up. But there you go. What did I think of Tony Stewart? I liked him until he won. I was pulling for him when he won in Richmond because he came close a couple times. He ran out of gas at New Hampshire. I was just amazed how well he was doing because he was like the first of those rookies that came in since Davey Allison, really, that was ready, willing, and able to win right out of the box. And with a team that was a new expansion team for the Gibbs team also. And coming right before Bobby Labonte got his championship. The thing that always bugged me about Tony Stewart, because back at that time, he had Zippy Zipadelli on top of the box. Like whenever Tony Stewart won, Greg Zipadelli just didn't seem to care. Like he was just like, yeah, we won the race and whatever. It's just like, well, look, my drivers never win these races. These guys win 5 in the season, and it's no big deal to them. It's like, well, great. Now Tony, on the other hand, you never doubted that he was excited to be there, but that was always one thing that ticked me off. I think there was a race at Dover that he won where Johnny Benson was trying to catch him and Stewart won, and Zipadelli's like, yeah, well, we won the race. Yeah, great. And I'm like, okay, wonderful. I mean, I'm not saying you got to, just do a whole cheerleader routine to impress me here, but I mean, I'm, at the same time, don't act so over it. That I just can't, I never liked that, but there you go. Back when I was a kid, it was more petty things would catch my attention for sure. How many NASCAR Winston Cup races had Dave Marcus won through 1997? We got guesses all over the place. 5, 4, 12, 7, 3. The answer is 5. The answer is 5. Remember when the Tony's that race? Yeah, I think Ron Fellows should have won that race, if I remember correctly. It was at 04 or 05. There was one of them that he was sick in. That he had that happen. Nicholas Gray, thank you for the super chat. Who's your driver? Well, I don't really have one now. Nowadays, Jerry Nadeau is still my driver, really, in that sense. There was that was definitely the guy I pulled for growing up. Derek Cope and Ricky Rudd are in that conversation as well. If I was in the sport now, if I was like that age now with this group of particular drivers, it's hard to say. It's hard to say who would be. I mean, I'd probably still go for like a lot of the teams that are, they're kind of struggling. Like I'd probably go for like Timmy Hill and some of those guys. Eric Jones, I think, is very underappreciated. And him being in the 43 car now, I think is pretty cool. Unfortunately, he had another kind of rough day tonight. It'd be very tough to say. It's difficult. I like Suarez. I at least like Suarez in the Trackhouse team. I didn't really follow Suarez as much until then, but I think that that probably would have grabbed me more. It's tough to say. I don't know who would be my top guy. I used to I pulled for McMurray a while when Ricky Rudd retired, so it was pretty cool when McMurray came back for the 500 this year. I know when he won the 500 in 2010, that was exciting. But really at that point, I was already kind of transitioning into not really having a guy out there. But that'd be kind of that. It was 04? Okay. Let's see. Yeah, Cole Witt. Yeah, Cole Witt was pretty cool. I got the chance to talk to him a couple times. Unfortunately, I missed the opportunity to talk to him in his last race. I didn't realize that Phoenix race in the 72 car was like his last start because he wasn't going to run Homestead. I thought he was going to run Homestead because that's where he actually made his debut. But it didn't work out that way. But good kid though. I hope he's doing well out there. Let's see. Oh my goodness, what is this? Oh, well, okay. I guess it's a little bit clearer. Okay, here we go. Next question? Whose 1995 comeback won him the Mildred Babe Didrikson Zacharias Courage Award? I'm going to need to read that again. Whose 1995 comeback won him the Mildred Babe Didrikson Zacharias Courage Award? Man, if that came up in a script, I'd need a few runs at that. But yes, thank you for the super chat, Nicholas. Whose 1995 comeback won him the Mildred Babe Didrikson Zacharias Courage Award? Probably McDowell I probably would pull for too. Obviously, the last place finishers thing. I guess that would be the real question, is if I would still look at the last place thing as much if I just started watching the sport now. Probably not. So tough to say. It's like a parallel universe. All right, we got guesses for Irvin. I think you guys are right. Irvin, yep, indeed. The answer is, of course, Ernie Irvin with his incredible comeback. Dave W. on YouTube posted a good video on Irvin's comeback in 95. I haven't watched. It's on my playlist. I got to watch it too, but I'm sure that's really good. Ultimate 23 Dragon asked about the Jerry Nadeau interview. So far, that's just on that's on hold indefinitely at this point. Last time I talked to him when the pandemic started, he really didn't want to do something like that. I'm hoping that he would at least be okay with me posting that, making that video public again, with the interview that we did before, because I thought he did a good enough job, with that and all that. I just think that he kind of second guessed that, because that was still a really good interview. We got a lot of interesting details out of that. I know it's a little different because I'm reading the script from it. And I still have the audio from it, but he's not, last we talked, he's not cool with me posting that. So I haven't posted that. So that's where that is. As far as I know, yeah, nothing new on that. Maybe the opportunity will come up at some point when things get a little more normal, but yeah, certainly I hope he's doing okay, but I haven't had any real talk with him really since then. So that's been, yeah, gosh, it's almost been a year now at this point. So we'll see. Yeah, never say never on that. Alrighty. What driver is said to have coined phrases like flat out and belly to the ground? What driver is said to have coined phrases like flat out and belly to the ground? Yeah, flat out, I figured was always there, but I guess that's more current. Somebody had to start saying it. Harry Loomis, favorite driver I've personally interacted with? Personally interacted with. Well, that's a tricky one. That's a tricky one. I've talked with Michael McDowell before. Like he was cool. Um, I gotta say, I've mentioned his name before. Probably JJ Yaley. I've probably run into him more than anybody else, and we always seem to cross paths in one race to the next. And he's always been really cool with me, which is really saying something. Given that, of course, we've written about him on the website before and all that, but he's always been really cool with me. So yeah, probably him. Yeah, I mean, I favorite maybe isn't the best word, because again, I can't play favorites, but in terms of somebody I'd look out for if I was at the track there again. Yeah, he'd be one certainly there. Hopefully, he runs Sears Point again. He usually seems to go out of his way to run the road course, even if he's with like a team like Jonathan Cohen's or BK Racing or Whitney Motorsports or any of these teams over the years. That would probably be one right there. Tommy Dreese, I talked to him a couple times. He's cool. I mean, he was very friendly. He introduced myself to his wife, and they were all hanging out, and he was promoting these different movies on his cars. I thought that was pretty cool. I haven't seen him in a while. I didn't really see him that much when he had when he drove for Starcom a couple of years ago. I don't think I saw him once that weekend, but yeah, but I saw him when he drove for Nemechek that time. Let's see. Driver is said to have coined phrases like flat out and belly to the ground. The answer is Joe Weatherly. I wouldn't have guessed that. That almost seemed like a Buddy Bakerism. Yeah, somebody gets Darrell Waltrip, Yarborough, Johnson, Fonnie Flock, Waltrip. Anybody get Weatherly? I don't know if anybody got Weatherly there. Yarborough, Junior Johnson, Tiny Lund. It sounds like Buddy Baker. It really does. Dustin Bifuglian. There you go. Tech complete, no issues. Byron's win is official. Okay, right on. Yeah, we don't really do the disqualification show format really as much anymore, but that's still a whole other thing. Let me check the Pockers page here. Get the word there. Yes, 2 minutes ago. Tech is complete. Byron is the winner, having one loose missing lug nut. Monetary fine to the crew chief. Truex, Kyle Busch, Chastain, Reddick, Custer, and Elliott. Oh, wow. All of them had one loose lug nut. Truex, Kyle Busch, Ross Chastain, Tyler Reddick, Cole Custer, and Chase Elliott. But Byron's the winner. Well, right on. Well, congratulations, William Byron. 2 Cup Series victories. Reddick did not get disqualified. And Timmy Hill, your last place finisher. So that article will be available later tonight. We'll do a couple more questions and then wrap up here for this evening. That was Johnny Beauchamp. Yeah, that's good guess. Bufflin for some reason. I wouldn't have thought that. Yeah, Joe Weatherly is the answer. What year did Richard Petty drive in his last NASCAR Winston Cup race? Oh, that was okay. A little of an easier one there. What year, rather, did Richard Petty drive in his last NASCAR Winston Cup race? I talk about the Chip Ganassi suspension. I don't have the full details on that. I don't really want to go into that too much. I'm certainly a fan of them opening the garage area again, so maybe a scenario like that wouldn't be possible. But I don't really know the circumstances behind all of that there. But unfortunate that Chip couldn't get to the track there this time around. His team did really well in general. Unfortunately, didn't quite get to victory lane, but Kurt and to a lesser extent Chastain were definitely there today. Yeah, the answer, of course, is 1992. You guys got it, 92. See if we can get a little harder one here. Yeah, almost our first time winner. Almost. Trying it. Alrighty. So we'll do one more question here tonight. What Cup champ, last question for tonight. What Cup champ said, quote, driving a race car is like dancing with a chainsaw? What Cup champ said driving a race car is like dancing with a chainsaw? Last question for this evening. I'll give you guys some time there to answer that one. Don't look it up. Go ahead and just guess. What Cup champ said driving a race car is like dancing with a chainsaw? Alrighty. Okay, we got guesses for DW and Kale and Tim Flock and Rusty and Dale Sr. and DW, Rusty, Kale, Ned Jarrett, David Starr, Big E, Bobby Allison, Joey Logano. How many consecutive first-time winners have there been in the Cup Series? Good question. I don't know what the record is on that. I have a feeling it hasn't been more than 2, unless you talk about the inaugural Cup season. But what Cup champ said driving a race car is like dancing with a chainsaw? And the last question for tonight, the answer is Cale Yarborough. Cale Yarborough. Indeed. I think that was the first guess on this one. The third one, Harry Loomis. Looks like you were the first one on that one. Cale Yarborough is indeed the correct answer. Looks like a few of you got it. Robbie Burns, Alexander Luft, Zachary Leffler, excuse me. There you go. You got it. Yep. Cale Yarborough is indeed the correct answer. So again, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. We'll probably wrap up the show here for tonight. Our next show is going to be next week after Sin City in Las Vegas, where we got, what's it, our triple header weekend next week. Truck Series, Xfinity Series, and the Cup Series. Entry list storylines article coming this Thursday. And leading into the action in Las Vegas, we got the Cup Series article coming later tonight. For Timmy Hill, now officially with his, I believe, 15th last place finish in the Cup Series and an early exit for the blue number 66 Toyota. We'll see if things turn around for driver and team next week at the Oval there. So again, thank you everyone for tuning in. At Last Car on Brock is my Twitter. Patreon.com/Last Car on Brock is my Patreon. Let's see. Stay tuned for more content on the YouTube channel. I know there's a third thing, but I already forgot what that was. Stay tuned for more content here on the YouTube channel, as well as Rise of the Field Fillers. Next episode still in the works. And lastcar.info, of course, the website. So have a good weekend, folks, and I'll see you next week.